Hey everyone. I've got a great guest today. Super excited to jump in. We are just going to get started in like a minute or so here. I am back home in Nashville. So we'll get it going. A couple folks trickling in. Welcome. Welcome to the Leap. Super excited about today's episode. We're going to get our guest up on stage here in just a minute, so hang in there with us. Appreciate y'all joining. All right. Thanks to those who are just joining us. We're about to kick off a new episode of The Leap. Super excited about our guest today, and I appreciate everybody tuning in. So give us a few minutes to get set up here, and we'll get it going. Thank you. Here we go. Let's see if we can get this. All right. There we go. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I'm definitely excited to dive into your business. I'm going to do like a little upfront kind of intro for folks who are just tuning in, and then we'll get into it if that sounds good to you.
Sounds great.
All right, cool. So thanks for folks who are coming in. I know people are joining, as they come along, but we are super excited about the guest we have today. Khaleel, and I want to make sure I'm saying that right. We good? Okay, cool.
You got it.
Khaleel Loyd is first of all, I'm just really excited to dive into this conversation just around how your business is sort of running and how it's been growing. But Khaleel Loyd is a servant leader and visionary, and he serves as the executive producer and co-founder of Loyd Visuals, which is a family-owned video agency based in Charlotte, North Carolina. Just 3 years after graduating with a degree in health communication and public health from UNC Charlotte, he left healthcare to build Loyd Visuals full-time with his brothers. And that is like, talk about taking a leap. I mean, that is quite the transformation. Through his leadership, the team has worked with tons of amazing clients. I mean, national and international brands like Airbnb, Honeywell, City of Charlotte, and the list is long, let me tell you. Khaleel is an award-winning entrepreneur, and he strives to change the way business is done by creating this new model, which is really supposed to be centered around, opportunity and community, which I really resonates with me. Today, he oversees business development, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and operations, and is currently on the board of Entrepreneurs Organization Accelerator, as well as the J. Alphonse, saying that right?
Got it.
Cool. Nicholson Foundation. All right. So, Khaleel, thank you so much for joining us. Really excited to hear more about your business and your brothers and everything you got going on. Tell us a little bit more, just in your own words, about your journey to starting the business and how it's evolved over time.
Sure. Well, first, Rachel, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, sharing the platform. I'm always excited to talk about my journey because I don't talk as much as I would like. I'm really behind the camera, behind the scenes, making the business run. So I'm really thankful for this opportunity. So the business started really as an idea. It started as an idea and an opportunity to build something of our own. As you mentioned, I went to UNC Charlotte, majored in health communication. And to be honest, that was really just job security, right? I wanted to make sure that I majored in something so that when I got out of college, I can get a decent paying job and make a living for myself. But as soon as I got into the corporate environment, I realized it just wasn't for me. I wanted, one, to not have a ceiling on my earning potential. I didn't want to be confined to working in a cubicle. And I really didn't like the corporate culture as well. So I got a chance to look around to my left and my right. My brothers and I, we all have different talents, but all talented within our own regard. So my youngest brother, Malik, he is our head of production. He oversees everything that, goes on our Instagram page to, what we deliver to our clients. And he's truly like a prodigy, right? This kid taught himself how to play the piano in middle school, picked up a camera in high school and started winning national competitions. I saw the talent and the drive that he had, and I didn't want that to be exploited. And so I figured, and I pitched to him on his way to Appalachian State University. And I was like, hey, you're going to have to work, to pay your way through college. How about we just start a business? And so that was really just the inception of Loyd Visuals. Now, Jim is our middle brother, and he works around brand partnerships. He also is our brand marketing manager. So he's a micro influencer. He does a bunch of work with like a lot of brands, from Nike to Puma, to Clark's. I mean, you name it. He works and creates content for those brands, and then he helps us with our brand as well. So, taking all of our talents in, we decided that it would be advantageous for us to start something of our own that we can potentially leave behind to our, future kids one day, and to build a system and a company that like leads with empathy, that leads with love. It's something that I didn't really see that often. So it's something that we wanted to make sure that we did on our end.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like it's always so interesting because like when you find somebody, and especially somebody who's close to you, who just like has this really intense creative power, and it's so clear to you, like I just love the sentiment of like that immediately the concern is like, I don't want that to be exploited, because that is exactly what this world does to creative people.
For sure.
So I definitely resonate with that. I'm curious, like I hear a lot of folks, and I have a lot of friends even, that start businesses with friends or with family or significant others. Can you talk a little bit about, what it's been like to run sort of a family business, and how you sort of like create boundaries, between, I guess, personal life, business life? I know things get complicated sometimes, probably, I imagine, but would love to understand that.
For sure. Yeah, I love, working with my brothers, to be honest. When I look at all of the companies that were founded, in the beginning of this nation, they were family businesses. So you look at Walmart's, you look at JP Morgan, Chase, you look at, you name them. There's a bunch of companies out here that were started and built off their last name. And so when I started really looking at like the Forbes, 100 top wealthiest lists, I started seeing like multiple family names, like multiple names of the same name listed. And I realized that in order to really build an enterprise, that you needed to work with people, your family, if you can, to build something that, can leave a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that thought in mind, we knew that the industry that we were going in was going to grow, right? The video industry is, it's a $134 billion industry just here in the US. And we really
Wow.
grew with the, evolution of social media and just the internet and technology. And so we knew that this field would allow us to grow exponentially if we had something good to offer to the marketplace. But working with my family is a dream come true, to be honest. In terms of setting boundaries, I'm going to be honest, like, and balance, when it comes down to balance, I feel like you don't really need balance if you love what you're doing, right? Like, there are going to be days where it's not so good and you're dealing with, maybe a client issue, or you didn't close a deal, or you're dealing with, one of the employees that is just having a rough time and you're wanting to be there to console them. But at the end of the day, one thing that we do is we make sure that we have meetings on Friday and Monday, and they're just executive huddles. Mm-hmm. Our meeting for Friday is really just a mental health check-in. We're not really talking about work. Sometimes work just bleeds into the conversation naturally, but the goal is for us to come together, have a conversation outside of business, to just check in and see how you're doing in your personal life. Are you, eating good? Are you working out? Things of that nature. And that really helps us because it separates our job titles from, who we are as brothers. That's one thing that we really do. And then every quarter we'll take a retreat as well. So we'll take a company retreat, executive retreat, and we'll go to LA, or we'll go out to, just another place in the US, and just really lock in and identify our goals for that particular quarter, and have a chance to just debrief. But again, for me, I love what I do. So there's not really much balance in my life. I really engulf myself in my work.
I definitely understand that. Yeah, oh man, there's so much incredible, like, advice, honestly, like just throughout that. And I appreciate kind of how you're thinking about more of the business, that, it's kind of bigger than just you and even just like this one life, like it's generational. And that's like clearly what the approach that you're taking. And I think that that's really powerful. I will say we also do the exec huddles Monday, Fridays. Highly recommend that. Fridays we do like wins, like show and tells, like stuff like that. Nice. And definitely the getting together in person for the more like strategic conversations when you can, and like kind of just taking a break from the day to day. Because I feel like must be very hard to zoom in and out from like being in the day-to-day to kind of like, all right, let's step back and do planning and think about, things on a higher level, which it's really important to take the time to do that. And it's hard to find. So I like very much appreciate the structure that you sort of put around that. I'm curious, like, can you tell us a little bit more about the vision that you have for sort of creating this new model for the way business is done? Like, what does that mean to you? And maybe how can other people pick up on some of these changes or habits?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's really important that we look at our past experience, especially being in corporate environment or maybe being a part of the organization that you just really didn't like. Maybe the culture wasn't adherent to your working style or your communication style. So when I was leaving my corporate job and starting the business, first, let me backtrack a bit. When I graduated from college and started working in 2015 as a healthcare consultant, I immediately realized that this is not something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so I went ahead and started the business and convinced my brothers to join in business with us in 2015. And then a couple of years later, I kept working, kept using my paycheck to fund the business. And I got to the point where it was like, it's time to make the leap, right? No pun intended. And so with that being said, I took all of my experiences in my corporate career and I said, you know what? I don't want to implement the things that I disliked into my company. And so this whole notion of changing the way business is being done is focusing more so on the how versus the what you're doing, right? How you're doing things on a day-to-day basis, how you're working with your team, how you're living out your values, right? Are you staying, focused on your mission and vision? And are you allowing all of those things to create guardrails around the business and how you do things within your company internally? Because what you'll find is that if there's chaos internally within your company, then the client is going to feel that. Your users are going to feel that. And so you want to make sure that, how you're doing, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis is a priority. And so I care about people very deeply. One of the things that we do Mondays before we get into business is I will open up with something that I found inspirational, over the past week. And I'll allow other people to share as well. When, current events happen, right? We will talk about those current events, right? Rest in peace to all of the slain victims in Buffalo, New York, right? Like, we'll talk about some of those things and then we'll have honest dialogue and feedback because it's really about the people and it's about creating an environment of trust. And once we do that, now we're able to go out and execute on whatever it is that, we set out to do. And so I think that's really important in all organizations to keep as a priority.
Yeah, that the creating that space and like that psychological safety is the number one and most important thing for people to be like doing their best work. So I can definitely understand that. And I think, in a world where the news cycles are so brutal, it's just constantly like checking in with folks and ensuring that people have that space is super, super important. So I feel like that more kind of like empathetic and human-centered approach is definitely coming through. And I think the how is super important because it's one thing to sort of have values, I guess, and it's another thing to kind of like have virtues, which are actions, like things that you actually do, Yeah. So I feel like that is a super powerful way to frame it because those actions mean so much more than even just like words on a paper. You can write values down all day, but how people behave.
Right. Yeah. How do you live that out? Yeah. How do you attach behavior to the values and then create examples for your employees or your team to live that out? I think is really important. It's something that I've been learning kind of as I go and as we grow.
Yeah, totally. Also, it's really fun when you like find people are mimicking behavior that you do that's like not good. And I'm like, oh no. I'm like,
exactly.
Oh no, like I've been doing that and that's why now other people are doing that. And I'm like, oh God, I have like a ruthless like self-reflection every like 6 months.
I mean, your business is a reflection of you, especially as founders and as CEOs, right? And sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's true. It's the more that you can kind of refine and elevate yourself, the better the business is going to be, which is a lot of pressure. But I mean, as founders, that's what we sign up for essentially. But that's why our mental health and our, just overall well-being is so important. because it directly correlates with the business.
Yeah, could not agree more. So in terms of switching gears a little bit, want to get a bit more tactical for
Sure.
people. So you oversee business development. What does that mean in the context of your business in terms of like your day to day? And then I'm curious, like how business development has sort of evolved over time. You know, we hear from a lot of people early days, you know, maybe you're getting a lot of projects through word of mouth. If you have that sort of professional network established, if not, maybe you're starting small and doing some more cold outreach, and then eventually things become more inbound. So I'm like really curious from a business development standpoint, how things have shifted with your business growing and what it means to you to kind of, you know, oversee that.
Yeah, great question. I love business with a passion. I think that's why I'm in the role that I am in currently, because one thing about being in a service-based business is that relationships are really key. And we've been fortunate to create some really meaningful relationships over the past 6 years that we've been in business. And that's what's really helped us drive our business. I'll be honest to say that we have not been intentional about driving our business and actually pitching companies in order for us to get business, which I think in some ways is a blessing, but now I'm learning that, okay, it's time to switch gears a bit. So throughout our, journey and just doing the work, we've been really hyper focused on just doing good work, right? Not worrying about the PR, not worrying about all the things that don't matter. We just want to do the work, and hopefully the work speaks for itself. And so what happens over time is that within our world, it's so cool because we get paid to create content. And then once we create that content, we share it. And now that content serves as a marketing tool for us that then brings in more leads. So we literally get paid to show off what we can do. And it's just a cycle that just continues. And so we're at a point now where we are looking to grow and scale the team, hiring some full-time employees, things of that nature. And so I need to now be more strategic around going after certain, for example, price points with some of the projects that we're taking on, or identifying is there a new market or a new client pool that we need to tap into, or is there another service offering that we can open up as well, to bring in another stream of revenue. So those are all the things that I'm currently working on kind of behind the scenes, but it's a learning process. I will say that it's been more word of mouth than us actually going out and like pitching an Airbnb or Honeywell. It's just about doing the good work and then being proximate to the communities that then lead to those business opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think it's super telling that that your entire business has been like people coming inbound to you and wanting work. That says a lot, obviously, about the quality of the work you're doing. I think, like, to me, I think getting the big news and PR stuff is great, and you reach a certain point like you're talking about now, where you kind of like are switching gears to that. But in a way, getting that whisper network going the way that you've got it, right, where people are like, oh, you got to talk to them, or oh, they did this work for us, and people are talking, they're obviously saying good things,
Yeah.
is really hard to do, and there's no shortcut to that. The only way to get that is to truly execute on amazing work that people literally want to show off and talk about.
Exactly.
So I feel like that's really telling, and it's exciting to hear kind of like switching gears around pitching. Speaking of which, since most things are inbound, how do you sort of decide what do you do and don't want to take on? I imagine you're saying no, or a decent amount.
Right, for sure. Anything you say yes to, you're saying no to something else. And so we've had to develop a process in which we look at a couple of factors, right? We look at, one, who is the potential client, right? What type of organization are they? Do they align with our mission or our vision, our values, just who we are? Are they going to be a client that we just want to work with, right? Are they, friendly, et cetera, et cetera? But I would say, to be really unfiltered, I mean, it comes down to budget. A lot of times for us, right? Like the budget
Amen.
has to make
Yeah.
sense. And I'm not going to, beat around the bush. I'm going to be very honest that, at this point, our price points are a lot higher than when we first entered into business, but it takes time. I mean, we've cut our teeth, we've, done our reps, done our 10,000 hours. And so now we're in a position where, we go out and we ask for what we feel like we deserve, and
Yeah.
at the market rate in which, you know, we feel like is comparable to what these companies are spending on a day-to-day basis for video. And so a lot of that goes into research. A lot of it is also being bold and just understanding your value, and then being able to communicate that value to your clients. And so we do have a vetting process. We have a list of questions on our website. So anyone that inquires to book with us, they have to go through a process, right? They have to go and answer all of these questions. And then we have a discovery call with them, right? But even before we get to the discovery call, there's another list of questions that they have to ask. And so now we're as prepared as possible to engage and discuss with this client or prospect if we're going to be a good fit. So a lot of it is us like interviewing the client, to be honest, to ensure that it's a good fit. Or, you know, we'll respectfully decline and refer out. And so that's another model that we're building out as well, is like a referral program, because we get a lot of work and a lot of projects that come our way that we just can't take on by ourselves. And so now we're working, actually just met with my producer today, to work on a really robust referral program so that we can create a network of creatives that can tap into these other opportunities as well.
Amazing. Yeah. I love that. And I feel like saying no is like, it's an honor, kind of, you know, like where you reach a point in your business where you're like, oh, like I've got enough going on that I'm starting to say no. And I feel like that is that's like a really important inflection point. And the budget, 1,000% matters so much. Like it matters so much. And I think honestly, it's kind of a red flag if a client gets weird about actively discussing money. To me, like that's kind of a red flag. I'm like, what's going on? What's going on here? Because people are spending a lot of money. I used to work at big agencies, and we pitched against our agency one time. When I was freelance, our proposal came in at 50,000. Theirs came in at 500,000, and I lost that deal. And I learned a lesson that day, because I heard through the back channels that it was because the price point on our
price was too low. Wow.
Too good to be true. Yeah. Yep. And like, this is a weird business. People like it's a really hard, like everybody's kind of shooting in the dark, because, you know, if you sell books online, you know how much books cost and how much they sell for. Like this is different. And so like, I learned a really tough lesson that day where I was like, dang, but yeah, it really can signal to people how seriously you even take yourself. And you know what I love that you're doing? Not only are you considering how much money is actually like available in the market at a macro level, you're also in demand, clearly. And that's the lever, right? Like the price goes up when you're in demand. And so that's basic economics. Like, sorry, clients. But, you know, I think, again, like the more optionality you have, the ability to sort of turn things down and grow the business like that, like the more you're able to say like, no, it's not at this point worth it to, you know, get out of bed for less than X. And I think that is totally a super important inflection point.
I want to highlight, if it's okay, I want to highlight your experience and your example that you just provided, because like to your point, you learned a lot through that process of pitching. But for people that, you know, are on the line that truly don't understand like how much these agencies are making and getting paid, 50,000 versus 500,000, you're talking about $500,000 versus $100,000, right? But these are the numbers that are literally out there for the type of work that in the industry that we're in, right? It's not uncommon for agencies to get paid and be on a retainer for millions of dollars a year. And to be honest, what's really interesting that I've been learning through agencies is like, they're not even really doing the work, right? A lot of agencies are managing the creatives who do the work for a low percentage of the overall budget. And so it's so important as creatives to understand the business that you're in and do your research and do your due diligence so that at least you can come to the table equipped with that knowledge. So I just wanted to like
100%.
retweet that statement, because I mean, that's a really, really good example and lesson learned.
Yeah. And oh my God, I'm ready to unpack this. So I'm like agencies, like, and I'm like the big ones. I mean, it's crazy. And you know, what's interesting to me, and I think it's timely, even related to your story of starting a video agency specifically, big agencies are built for TV production. And that has always been the main form of advertising since forever, until about 10 years ago. And when that started, like digital transformation started happening, these big agencies are charging way too much money for like a Facebook video. And then you know what? A commercial runs on TV, 30-second spot can run on TV for years.
Right. Yep.
A Facebook video, a video on Instagram has a very short shelf life, and the quality has to be high. And then you have to have a much higher volume of content in the digital landscape than you do like one TV commercial every 6 months or a year, whatever. So suddenly, like these days, basically, like to me, I think that old model is broken. And what's happening is we have a joke, like most agencies are 3 freelancers under a trench coat. Like, yeah, because you're right. Those big agencies are charging $500,000 for the same scope of work. And we're able to charge 50, not because we're paying people less. In fact, people are probably getting more through us.
Right.
Taking home more. We're charging less because you can shoot and produce video. You don't, with your iPhone these days, like you don't need a 4K color corrected screen to shoot, to edit a commercial. So it's just a different ballgame. And so the accessibility of that digital landscape, of like the quality of content you can create with less, production and equipment. And to your point, what is a service-based business? It's people doing the work. So like it's the same people, right? I'm like, yo, what do you mean it's too cheap? Like I'm the same person. I worked at that agency. Like
right.
I'm the talent. So I'm like, I just feel like there's a lot of, it's just crazy to me how like if you call yourself a freelancer, suddenly you're in like $5 Fiverr territory. That company insults me. And then if you call yourself an agency, you're in hundreds of thousands of dollars territory. And
precisely, what
really is the difference? I think like really what an agency is a scaled up freelance business. So I feel like I don't know, I resonate with that, and I think it's really important. I agree that people know that. Like I come from the agency world, not a lot of people do, not everybody does, and there's money out there, and it's all about like the framing and how you approach that conversation. So I very much appreciate your honesty and transparency on the topic. It's super important.
Yeah, for sure.
So really quick, on pricing, curious, like I know as somebody who has gone from like myself, a one person sort of shop, into more people are involved, more financial complexities. How do you think about pricing in terms of like, hourly versus fixed? Like what's your sort of take on what, model to think about in certain circumstances?
Love this question because I don't think we talk about this enough in the creative community. So we started off on an hourly type of pricing model, if you will. So pre-production, $100 per hour. This project will take us 10 hours to do. You do the math, right? And it's easy for the client to digest. All right, I'm paying for 10 hours of your time. And we quickly realized 2-3 years into working that didn't make sense, right? I follow a guy named Chris Do on Instagram. Are you familiar with Chris Do? He's that guy, right? When it comes down to just communicating value. And what we quickly realized is that, and I was able to see that you all have a similar model within Wethos, is value-based pricing, right? So we've transitioned from hourly pricing to value-based pricing. I no longer put down an hourly rate on any of our itemized services. There's pre-production and there's a number. There is production, 2 days of filming, 3 days of filming, a number. Post-production, a number, right? Because the key thing, and going back to research, is like you want to understand a couple of different things, especially in the video world, right? So a couple of things that we look at is, what is the size of the company? Is this a Fortune 100, 500 company, right? What is their annual revenue? How much are they spending on marketing, on video in the past, right? You want to gather all the information so that you can come to the table with an offer that makes sense, so that they take you serious, right? Back to your, example of your pitch, right? Against your old agency. And then you also want to understand the usage. How is your content being used? Is it going to be used on social media? Are ads going to be put behind it? Are are you going to use, are they going to use your content for TV ads, or they going to just use your content for internal distribution? So truly understand how the content is being used. And then from there, you can start understanding the value of your content that the company is going to be utilizing, right? So if you're dealing with a company that has, let's say, I don't know, 100,000 employees globally, and they want you to create an internal video around recruiting or retention, then what is the value of 100,000 employees seeing your video that then helps them reduce their retention rates, or increase rather their retention rates, right? I think that's really, really important for you as the creator or the business, consultant, to really understand, because that's how you're able to understand your value. And now the key is, once you understand and do all your research, then it's about putting a number to that value and then talking through that with your client. And so you want to make sure that you're creating a really nice proposal, right? That's visually appealing, that is easy to understand, that provides an overview, that provides case studies, that then provides more about your process, and then has a budget listed out, right? Like, all of these nuances of how to do business, I think needs to be talked about a lot more. And so for us, it's been a learning experience over time. And sometimes we'll throw out a number if we're in demand, right? If we don't have the capacity to take on a lot of work, we'll throw out a number to see if it sticks, right? And then you can always negotiate, right? I think we undervalue the concept of negotiating, prices. It's okay to say, hey, I'm going to come in at, 60,000, knowing that the lowest that I'm going to take is 50. That's business, right?
Yeah.
So that's just been our journey, and my personal journey over the years of just doing business, with large organizations, and just understanding, again, our value, and then learning how to communicate that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think like the hourly model ends up putting people in a place where you're more focused on putting a dollar value on like your self-worth almost, because time is an impossible thing to like put a dollar value on. It's like the only thing none of us can get back. And less focused on, to your point, like the output for the client and what that's actually going to do to them and the value. I'd never heard somebody suggest that you think about the channels and like almost like the reach and the different sort of ways in which that could be used, and to consider that in pricing. And I think that's a really, really good tip. And it's very specific, I think, well, maybe it's not specific to video, actually. That could be specific really to any kind of content. But I think that's a super interesting way to consider it, because I always say this about logos. I'm like, people are like, a logo, why is it so expensive? A logo. I'm like, this motherfucking logo is going to live on all of your shit.
Everything,
like,
right.
Your website and your business cards and your storefront, if you have one, and your whatever. Like, it's the face. It's the face of the company. So when I hear people about a logo, I'm like, you gotta be kidding.
Right.
So it's like a very similar, I think like the way that you think about that is super smart. And I imagine even just articulating that to the client probably really helps in that negotiation. Like, hey, don't forget, you got 100,000 employees.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times you have to educate the client, right? Like, they don't know what they don't know. And to be honest, sometimes the people that you're dealing with, they might not be like the CMOs. They may just be like maybe the head or the second or third person in their department. And for them, when they see $50,000 or $60,000, they're thinking about, damn, well, my salary is whatever, whatever my salary is, right?
Totally.
And so they don't really have the information, they don't have the knowledge to truly understand what their boss's budget is and how much money they're controlling. So a lot of times when I'm speaking with prospects and other folks in various industries, I'm having to educate them on like, hey, this is our process, this is how much time it takes, and this is what we've been doing with other companies similar to yours anyway. So
yeah, that too, like, is even an even bigger reason to put a really nice like proposal together, because people have to sell internally. And they got to sell up through the ranks, and they got to answer these questions for their boss. And if you're not in the room, because you're not going to, obviously, like, they're not going to necessarily invite the vendor into those conversations.
Right.
You need to arm that person with whatever you can to help them sell internally. I also used to do, I don't know if you know Loom, which is like a video screen cap. I used to send a proposal with like a 3-minute Loom of my voiceover. And then that made it so much easier for them to sell internally or circulate the information around, because they would just forward it, like, here's the proposal to their boss or to whoever else, the stakeholder that needs to, give the sign off. And here's a quick walkthrough from them, 3 minutes. And it just, the personalization of that. And I think the way that it feels like I'm able to basically get a meeting with that person without actually getting a meeting with them, our close rate was way higher when we started to do that. So
I love that. I'm taking that idea if you're okay with that.
Yes, please do. Yeah, and especially as people get bigger client stuff, there's a ton of layers to get through, and understanding that and helping them kind of push things through internally. I also sometimes I'll get on the phone with people who I know need to sell internally, especially for a big ticket thing, and I'm just straight up about it. I'm like, all right, what do you need? I'm like, let's talk. Who needs to say yes to this? Once you get them on your side, your goal is to send somebody in there who's gonna, pound the table for you, basically.
Exactly. Yep.
So I'm like, okay, how can we get this done? What other information can I share? Can I record X, Y, Z, whatever? And they'll tell you, well, that's when they start to open up about, well, so-and-so is kind of hesitant because of this reason, and blah, blah, blah. This is it.
Exactly.
All right, let's build a case. Let's go. They're like, before you know it.
That's so true.
Turn them into a salesperson, basically.
That's so true. I literally had a conversation like that yesterday and followed up again today with what they needed to present to their, higher ups. And so, it's the strategy and the methodology around thinking and how you sell, it's really, for me, it's evolved over time. And I think 3 to 4 years ago, I wouldn't have taken that approach of equipping the individual that is looking to, purchase our services with making sure that they had everything that they need. I felt oh, okay, well, I'm providing you X, Y, Z. Let me know if you guys want to work with this or not.
Just trust me. Yeah. Let me know. And you
totally. Got to dig deeper. So I love your perspective on that.
Yeah. And I agree that I don't think this really tactical stuff is talked about enough. And these are processes, sales playbooks and processes. And I know sales is kind of an icky word. But I think in order to really land the projects that have those strong values alignment, the budget that really makes you excited to jump on it, and that is going to create something that you can be really proud of, it takes some time to work your way through those systems and understand and navigate all the different people sort of involved. And once you have a good mapping of, okay, organizations of this size typically have these layers and these are my decision makers. Nonprofits is a different beast too. GuideStar's got all that financial information. But understanding the navigating of that, once you have those sort of, systems in place, then it becomes much easier to kind of rinse and repeat and speed the process up, because you kind of can foresee these different things and these different factors coming into play.
Exactly.
So last question, a lot of folks out there either looking to take a leap or maybe have taken the leap recently, not by choice, because there's been a lot of layoffs, which is super unfortunate in this space. A lot of people kind of figuring out what they're going to do next. What's your advice?
Take the leap. Take the leap.
Get started.
That simple. Do not overthink it. Anything that you're doing for a company and you're doing it at a high level, you can do for yourself if you so choose to. Look around, within your friend circle, within your family, and figure out how to build a business. How can you go into work with strangers when you can't even work with your friends and family? I think that's really absurd to me. I think that concept just doesn't make any sense, right? So if you have the network of people within your circumference and you all do similar things, a lot of my friends are consultants, right? As a consultant, you hop really from industry to industry, and it's not necessarily about being super technical, depending upon what type of field you're in. It's about being able to talk with people, to project manage, right? To reach, goals and metrics and things of that nature. So I would say just start. Do not overthink it. Do your research. Surround yourself with people that are going to encourage you and motivate you, and that are going to inspire you. And, study the great companies, study the great people and the innovators out here, and follow their steps, right? And then filter out what doesn't make sense for you, and then apply what's applicable. And I think that once you get outside of your head and you have a vision, you have a goal that you want to execute on, literally just do it. Do not overcomplicate it. Reach out to, myself, reach out to, Rachel, and just say, hey, like, yo, I'm hungry. Find a mentor, find somebody that, who has maybe that you aspire to be, in a situation or in a particular position. Find somebody already in that position and then reach out to them. I mean, the worst that they can say is no, right? The worst that anybody can say is no. So, yeah, that's my advice is just take the leap.
Yeah, I think finding somebody, I love that advice of like even finding somebody in that position where you're looking to be and then lifting the veil on it. Because I think most of the time I've been surprised, I guess, to learn that like things aren't as complicated as maybe I was making them out to be in my head. And I'm like, oh, actually the path to getting here is much clearer now. And I think identifying those unknowns, the best way to do that is to talk to somebody who's like been doing it before. Like I talk to founders that are like 3 stages later than me all the time. And I'm like, I have all these problems, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, yep, been there. Here's like kind of how this played out for me. Take or leave that.
Yeah. The other thing that I would say is like, one, you have to create a business that has a viable, profitable business model, right? So you have to be tried and true. But once you get to the point where you kind of got the plane off the ground a little bit, there are accelerator programs, there are communities, there are a lot of resources out there that you can tap into, or your chamber of commerce, or, you'll be surprised, right? Like at the stage that we're at, once you start getting the attention of people, you'll start finding investors, you'll start, learning how to get creative around, different funding avenues as well. So once you get started and you have a viable business model, and I read up a little bit about, your guys' story where you, in the 18 months, you generated like $1.4 million in revenue, right? Like that's significant. And it allows you to then say, okay, cool. Well, I can keep on doing this. We can potentially sell the company, or we can get into another field. And the opportunities are endless. Once you get into the space and you get your reps and you get the experience, you have so many other avenues to be able to swim in. So yeah, just do it. Do a lot of like self-reflection and understand like, self-awareness is key in my opinion. So
Yeah.
entrepreneurship is like not for everybody. Like I'm not a huge proponent of saying like leave your job and become an entrepreneur. No, like be really self-aware, look yourself in the mirror, understand your strengths and weaknesses, right? Hide your weaknesses. And if entrepreneurship is something that you have a desire to venture into, then just do it and figure it out along the way. I mean, you got the rest of your life to work for a company if that's what you want to do too. So you can always like backtrack and apply for jobs
Yeah.
if it doesn't work out.
That is a good point. Actually, like a lot of people rotate in and out of full-time work. Sometimes they go back in, sometimes they come back out and they're freelance again. Like, yeah, I feel like that's important. And yeah, I think like the self-awareness piece, I cannot stress enough because starting a business is basically a ruthless exercise in self-awareness. Like you're just kind of staring at yourself in the mirror every day, because if you don't get out of bed and get it done, especially in the early days, like it's not going to happen. It's not going to exist. So like bringing something into the world like that is, it will force you into that reflection. And so being in the mindset of being ready for that kind of like feedback from, life is definitely super, super important. I think people get tripped up in their own egos a lot, and that leads to failure because they couldn't admit that something was wrong, or they were wrong, or it wasn't the right idea, or whatever it is,
Exactly.
So if folks want to find you, follow along, catch up maybe on other stuff that you're reading or watching, where can they do that?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. My personal page, I'm not as active, but I mean, if you like, listen to me drive around the city and rap lyrics or sing in my car, feel free to follow me. But you can catch really all the action on Loyd Visuals page. I'm getting more intentional about the content I put out on my personal page and starting to share a bit more about, like topics like we had today in our conversation on my personal page. But definitely follow us at Loyd Visuals. You can go to our website, check out some of our work, loydvisuals.com with 1 L. And we have some really great projects coming out soon. So stay on the lookout. We got a couple documentaries dropping. We got some work with some really cool, big name brands. And so I'm really excited about the next couple of months. So yeah, but thank you for
Awesome.
your time. Yeah, really appreciate, the platform.
Yes, of course. And hey, if y'all are looking to check them out, like you should. If you're even thinking about it, like you should, because the reel already is amazing. And I just feel like whatever you're cooking up that's coming out next is going to be on another level yet again. So I
For
really
sure.
appreciate you taking the time, joining us, imparting all this like learned, experience and wisdom on everyone. And I'm sure that folks found it really helpful. I know I learned a bunch. I always do. So thank you
Likewise.
again. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you roll out next. We will catch everybody, I believe, next week for our next episode of The Leap. And thank you again for joining us. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Rachel.